Hello everybody and welcome back to Colony Survival. Now, as you can probably tell, the video series is taking a bit of a change in direction of how it's working. I'm recording this in post, if you couldn't already tell by the fact the video is moving much faster than I am. But I did this primarily just because the series needed to speed up a bit. Like, I spent 2 episodes just building up the walls from like the ground level up to the point where they were at the start of this video. I don't think I've really changed much in terms of the castle outside of what you guys have seen from what I can recall. It has been a while, like, prior to me playing the game, recording this episode since I'd played it previously. Like, there was quite a bridge of time between the recording of Part 2 and Part 3, simply because I didn't necessarily want to play Colony Survival, and I kind of wanted to play Bloodborne more, so I've been recording a lot more of that. And more recently been playing other games that I wanted to actually get finished. But the series did need to speed up because we were spending a lot of time just sort of building up the walls, which is kind of a monotonous thing. I also realised that I forgot to turn on the glow at this point, so I'm not sure how much you guys can actually see of these walls, but primarily we're just building the walls up to be the height that I wanted them to be. The idea was that this thing is going to look as imposing as possible, and sort of this gigantic structure that towers over the sort of city itself, and then also looks imposing to anything that might threaten the kingdom, I suppose, as well. Of course, our only enemies really are the undead, which appear to just sort of be dead colonists that have come back and are now trying to kill the living ones, which is usually what the undead do in everything fictional anyway. Yeah, building the corner of these towers was a bit of a pain as well, because I had to like slowly edge my way forward so I could hit the edge of the block, because unlike in Minecraft, which is a game that looks incredibly similar to this as you might have already gauged, there isn't a mechanic so you can sort of crouch on the edge of things, and I just fell off the wall right there in the video. I'm not sure how lined up the audio to what's happening in the video is going to be, so I might stop doing things like that. But yeah, there's no mechanic to sort of hang on the edge of something and sort of stop yourself from falling off. So you sort of have to just edge along things and really hope you don't fall off at the wrong point. Because luckily I managed to fall off on the side that was covered in water, but if I'd fallen off on the other side doing the same thing, I would have just hit the ground and immediately died. Which wouldn't have been good, because you lose everything in your hotbar when you die, which would have meant losing a bunch of stone and some wood, although we have way more stone than we're ever going to need, basically. At this point I've started building the sort of second layer. Now the reason for this is the crenellations that I wanted to put onto the castle. I wanted them to stand out and be more prominent from the castle than the rest of the walls, rather than just being one continuous block tower that goes upwards, which is what it would look like otherwise. I added this secondary rim which sort of pushes the towers and the walls out slightly, just to make the crenellations stand out, obviously, and also add some sort of texture. I don't really know the word to use, like an extra thing onto the castle to make it stand out more and look less monotonous and same all the way around. Now, originally I added this, I think, about 3 blocks high, with the crenellations sort of sitting along the top of them. I did also, at a later point, realised that I wasn't necessarily a fan of this style, and I don't think the things necessarily went down quite as far as I would have liked them to do. So it took me a while to get around to doing that, but I was just building in the walkways at this point. Now, I wasn't sure on how to do the walkways, because the idea I had in my head originally was to not have an inner crenellation piece at all, and just have the walkways sort of be open, looking back into the castle. But I realised with the walls being quite as high as they are, not having a back on the edge of the walls looked really weird. So I later decided to add in the internal crenellations, but the internal crenellations don't go down quite as far as the external ones. So they look more sort of more minute and more almost picturesque, sort of more innocent, I suppose, which is really weird when relating to a castle. But they don't look quite as imposing or as menacing as the external ones. And I feel like that idea works quite well in terms of a castle, because obviously the sort of the king and the queen or whatever will be on the inside, so they want things to look pretty and nice and have the sort of luxuries of it, as opposed to their enemies and people visiting that might see the outside crenellations, which need to look more menacing and imposing and sort of almost threatening, I suppose. I don't necessarily imagine this king and queen would rule by fear, but it's a tool that works quite well in persuading your enemies not to attack you. So, yeah, I feel like it's kind of a weird situation that you have to sort of balance out, but I quite like the idea of this being imposing, and at some point I believe I referred to the castle as Harrenhal-like, which is the castle from Game of Thrones. I believe it's the one that's sort of in the middle of the kingdom, and it's this tower. It's supposed to be this towering sort of monstrosity that's incredibly imposing, but was completely fucked on by a dragon. So maybe not the best idea, but there's no dragons in Colony Survival as of yet, so I think it's okay to be kind of this big towering and imposing thing. Now, at this point in the video, I'm still working on these crenellations. It does take a while to get really anything big built in this game, I feel. And I guess that's sort of the same in Minecraft. It's just been so long since I've played that game that I've sort of forgot the sort of time it takes to build stuff. And usually if I built stuff in that game, it was with other people, so obviously the time is cut in half, basically, just by the number of people that you have with you. But yeah, as you can see, I decided on the shorter crenellations on the inside rather than the longer ones on the outside. But at this point, I'd started adding in the crenellations themselves to the tops of the walls, and I found a little trick with rhythm to get them placed down quite quickly. Occasionally the rhythm would get a little out of tune, which meant I had to sort of go back and knock out bits of wall and redo them slightly, but it did speed up the whole crenellation process a lot faster than building the crenellations down in the actual village. And as you can see, I just figured out that the glow feature is a thing, because I hadn't played the game in so long, I forgot that it was even a thing. But I'm not sure if I just did it then in the video or not, because how I'm actually seeing the video back, it's kind of stuttery, which is just how the editor works. But yeah, I can't remember if I'd just done it in the video or not. But the way I actually started doing the lower part of the crenellations, because I wanted the crenellations to almost look like they were gripping onto the wall. So I basically did a thing where I'd cut out underneath the existing crenellations and add in a lower point one. So basically the crenellations were doubled. So you had the crenellations on top, and then you had the ones underneath the extended portion of the wall to sort of make it look like it was almost gripping onto the castle. It was quite an extensive process to do it, to be honest, and I tested out the idea on a little part of the village that you guys might have seen earlier, where I built a walkway that now connects the secondary archer tower, which sits on top of the mine, to the walls, which then leads directly onto the drawbridge type thing that leads into the castle. So that was the primary thing with getting that done. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was kind of unhappy with how the crenellations looked on the outside. They kind of seemed too small to me and not as imposing as I wanted to, and as I mentioned, they didn't really grip to the walls, they just sort of popped out from them. So this is the point that I actually went back and started adding in those underneath crenellations. So I started doing this by basically digging out from underneath the current crenellations and then adding in one block underneath them. Now, this process was pretty time consuming to actually get done, so as you noticed, I sort of found ways to sort of speed up the process after a while by sort of digging out points within the towers at least. Now, I couldn't quite easily replicate this on the outside of the walls, so when I actually came to extending the walls down, what I did was I tunneled into part of the wall and then basically created a bottom ridge section, which was the bottom point of the crenellations and the bottom point of where the new wall low point needed to be. So basically there's this zigzag going all the way around the castle, and I was walking along that, building the new segments of the crenellations in, which sped up the process quite a lot and made it less sort of not necessarily less monotonous to do, but sort of less boring to constantly have to dig down at each singular point across the wall and add in extra blocks. I simply just walked around the wall on top of these zigzags and put in the new blocks. Actually building that nearly got me killed though, because I fell off on part of the wall that wasn't with water on that side. I think it's the side that you can see sort of ahead of where I just was, where it was grass and sand. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. The series as a whole should continue sort of more like it was doing, but still in this format with the next part. I didn't actually record the rest of the building the walls down because I felt like it was basically the same thing as what you guys have already seen in this video. But like I said, thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.